The Rwandan Genocide, one of the most tragic events of the 20th century, unfolded over a span of 100 days in 1994, leaving a lasting mark on the world. To understand the depth and devastation of this genocide, it's essential to explore its historical roots, the events that led up to the massacre, the horrific violence itself, and the aftermath that continues to shape Rwanda today. Historical context and roots of tension. Rwanda is a small country in Central Africa, home to three main ethnic groups: the Hutu, the Tutsi, and the Twa. The Hutu made up the majority of the population, while the Tutsi were the minority, but historically held power. The origins of tension between the Hutu and Tutsi are complex and rooted in Rwanda's pre-colonial and colonial history. Before European colonization, the distinction between Hutu and Tutsi was largely socio-economic. The Tutsi were typically cattle herders and wealthier, while the Hutu were mostly farmers. Over time, these class distinctions began to take on ethnic overtones. During the colonial period, first under German rule and later under Belgian rule, these divisions deepened. The Belgian colonialists favored the Tutsi minority, granting them political power and privileges while marginalizing the Hutu majority. This favoritism fostered resentment and division between the two groups, laying the groundwork for future conflict. In 1959, a Hutu revolution led to the overthrow of the Tutsi monarchy. Thousands of Tutsis were killed, and many more fled to neighboring countries. Rwanda became an independent republic in 1962, with the Hutu in power. The following decades were marked by cycles of violence between the Hutu and Tutsi, with Tutsi exiles in Uganda forming the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, a rebel group determined to return to Rwanda. Prelude to genocide, the RPF and political tensions. By the early 1990s, tensions between the Hutu government and the RPF had escalated. In 1990, the RPF invaded Rwanda from Uganda, sparking a civil war. The Hutu-dominated government, led by President Juvenal Habyarimana, used the invasion to stoke anti-Tutsi sentiment, labeling all Tutsis as enemies of the state and traitors. In August 1993, a peace agreement, known as the Arusha Accords, was signed between the RPF and the Rwandan government, aimed at ending the civil war and establishing a power-sharing government. However, extremist Hutu factions opposed the agreement, viewing it as a threat to their power. These extremists, known as the Interahamwe militia, began planning the systematic extermination of the Tutsi population. The trigger, April 6, 1994. The spark that ignited the genocide came on April 6, 1994, when President Habyarimana's plane was shot down as it approached Kigali, the Rwandan capital. It remains unclear who was responsible for the attack, but Hutu extremists blamed the RPF and used the event as a pretext to launch the genocide. Within hours of the plane crash, roadblocks were set up, and the killing began. The Interahamwe militia, along with ordinary Hutu civilians, began systematically hunting down and killing Tutsis and moderate Hutus. The violence spread rapidly across the country, targeting men, women, and children alike. The genocide, 100 days of horror. Over the next 100 days, from April to July 1994, an estimated 800,000 people were brutally murdered. Most of the victims were Tutsis, but moderate Hutus who opposed the genocide or protected Tutsis were also targeted. The killers used machetes, clubs, and firearms to carry out the massacres, often slaughtering entire families. Rape was also used as a weapon, with thousands of women subjected to horrific sexual violence. The scale and speed of the genocide was staggering. Churches, schools, and hospitals, where people sought refuge, became slaughterhouses. Neighbors turned on neighbors, and even children were not spared. The international community, despite being aware of the unfolding genocide, largely failed to intervene. The United Nations had peacekeepers in Rwanda, but their mandate was limited, and they were not authorized to stop the killings. Appeals for reinforcements were ignored, and many countries, including Belgium and France, withdrew their troops, leaving the Rwandan people to fend for themselves. The Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, victory. While the genocide was raging, the RPF, led by Paul Kagame, launched an offensive to take control of the country. By July 1994, the RPF had captured Kigali and declared victory, effectively ending the genocide. However, The horrors of the genocide left Rwanda in ruins, with entire communities wiped out and the social fabric of the nation torn apart. Many of the perpetrators of the genocide fled to neighboring countries, particularly Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, where they formed militias and continued to pose a threat to Rwanda's stability. The presence of these genocidaires in Zaire contributed to the outbreak of the First and Second Congo Wars in the late 1990s, further destabilizing the region. Aftermath and justice. The aftermath of the genocide was catastrophic. Rwanda was left with a traumatized population, mass graves, and a society in desperate need of healing. The RPF, now in power, faced the daunting task of rebuilding the country and seeking justice for the victims. In the years following the genocide, Rwanda established the Gacaca courts, a traditional form of justice aimed at addressing the overwhelming number of perpetrators. These community courts tried lower-level perpetrators, while higher-ranking officials and organizers were tried by the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, ICTR, established by the United Nations. The ICTR, based in Arusha, Tanzania, prosecuted key leaders of the genocide, delivering several convictions. Despite these efforts, the scars of the genocide remain. Many survivors continue to suffer from trauma, and the legacy of the genocide has shaped Rwandan politics and society ever since. Under Paul Kagame, who became Rwanda's president in 2000, the country has pursued policies of national reconciliation and economic development, with a focus on unity and rebuilding. The role of the international community. The international community's response to the Rwandan genocide has been widely criticized as inadequate. Despite clear signs that a genocide was imminent, global powers, including the United States, France, and the United Nations, failed to act. The UN peacekeeping mission in Rwanda, UNAMIR, was severely underfunded and under-equipped to deal with the situation. Many analysts believe that the international community could have prevented or significantly mitigated the genocide had it intervened earlier. The failure to do so has led to profound soul-searching and reforms within international organizations like the United Nations, with the aim of preventing future atrocities on a similar scale. Rwanda today. Today, Rwanda is often hailed as a model of post-conflict recovery. Under Kagame's leadership, the country has experienced significant economic growth, political stability, and social development. Kigali, the capital, has been transformed into one of the cleanest and safest cities in Africa. Rwanda's efforts in reconciliation and unity have been lauded, with the country making strides in areas such as gender equality, education, and healthcare. However, Kagame's government has also been criticized for its authoritarian tendencies, with allegations of political repression and limited freedom of speech. Despite these challenges, Rwanda's recovery from the brink of destruction remains a powerful testament to the resilience of its people. The Rwandan genocide stands as one of the darkest chapters in modern history, a horrifying reminder of the consequences of hatred, division, and indifference. The world's failure to act in the face of such unspeakable violence has led to renewed efforts to prevent genocide and protect vulnerable populations. Rwanda's journey from genocide to recovery is a testament to the power of reconciliation and the enduring human spirit, though the lessons of 1994 continue to resonate worldwide. Don't forget to like,